Go. Okay. Let me share my screen. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Let me just change that. There we go. Welcome to the first of 3 campaign training webinars that Disability Victory is hosting this fall. Before we get started, first thing, my name is Sarah Blahovic. My pronouns are she and her, and I am a white woman with short brown hair, wearing glasses. I'm wearing a black shirt. Before I hand it over to today's trainer, we have a few accessibility and housekeeping notes. Today's event does have live captioning and ASL interpretation. To view the captioning, click the Show Captions icon along the menu ribbon. You can also view the captions in stream text. We will be placing the stream text link in the chat. To access ASL interpretations, we do have the ASL interpreters pinned on screen, but you can also access them in a resizable window by going down to Meeting Controls toolbar at the bottom of the screen and clicking the interpretation icon. If you're on a smaller screen, you might have to click on the More icon and then click Interpretation. Then choose the American Sign Language channel, and you will be able to pull up a floating video that you can move around the screen. If you need any help with accessibility during this event, please message me or Neil, my co-founder at Disability Victory, for help. We do invite you to submit questions throughout the workshop for our trainer. You may submit your questions using the chat. If you're on the phone and want to ask a question, you can raise your hand. We do not see anyone on the phone with us, so don't have to worry about that. If you will be asking questions, please try to keep them somewhat brief so we have time to address everyone's question. You can also email them to hello@disabilityvictory.org. By default, you can only chat with the hosts and panelists for this event. We do that just to make sure that there's no extra noise, because if someone uses a screen reader, it will read out the entire chat for them, and that's kind of annoying. So we wanted to make sure not to do that. We are recording today's session, as I said, and we will inform you once that is available so that you can watch it for playback. So for those of you who are new to Disability Victory, we are a 501c4 organization. Our mission is to build the political power of disabled progressives through training, networking, and leadership development. So welcome, and we're happy to have you here. Now, Neil, do you want to add anything before we get started?
No, I think you did everything.
Okay, yep. So just a quick acknowledgement before we get started. This slide deck is adapted from a training created and delivered by today's trainer, Atima Omara, during the 2021 Elevate campaign training for people with disabilities program. That program was created by Neil and myself at the National Council on Independent Living. Those source materials are available at nickel.ncil.org/elevate. So you can always go and look there, but thank you to them for allowing us to use and adapt those slides. And with that, I would like to welcome today's trainer, our board member, Atima Omara. Atima is an award-winning political strategist, leader, advocate, and writer and speaker who has worked at the intersection of electoral politics and the progressive movement. A former campaign staffer, political organizer, nonprofit executive, and candidate for public and political party office herself, Atima has spent over 15 years working as staff for Democratic federal, state, and local political campaigns across the country, as well as elected officials. She's also worked for or led local, state, or national campaigns and organizations that focus on reproductive rights and justice, labor, voting rights, disability rights, and criminal justice reform. She is the founder and president of Omara Strategy Group, which is a political and advocacy consulting firm for progressive candidates, organizations, and causes providing training, coaching, and voter engagement services. And with that, I am going to hand it over to Atima.
I realized I was on mute. Hello, everyone. And are you just going to run the slides? Or somebody going to run the slides, or should I run the slides?
Yes, I will run the slides.
Oh, okay, cool. Awesome. Hey, everyone. So great to be here with you today. Thank you for taking time out of your work day, regular day in the middle of the week, to join for this training. Sarah gave a pretty good background on me. I think the things that I'd like to add is that I'll definitely be pulling from experience as having been a candidate for public office, as well as somebody who's worked on campaigns. Because, I know where a lot of you all are as you're considering whether you want to do this, whether it's next year, in the next couple of years. And there's lots of good groundwork to lay in getting ready to run for office. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in this session. Next slide. So the training is focused very much on your story, your campaign, and your branding. And the importance around those things is the need to have an answer as to why you are running for office. That's something that you'll learn today. A lot of people run, but they haven't really actually figured out the why, right? The importance of your personal story to launching a meaningful campaign that resonates with your community, how the foundation of your story shapes your campaign message, how digital media tools help to brand you and your campaign, and the importance of having a digital presence as a candidate. These are things that I'm going to also try and talk to. I'm a big believer in some of the work that I do in my consulting. I really focus on communities that have been historically marginalized in the political process, and the disabled community is one of them in all of its diversity. And so, I'm going to try and pull examples for you all that are applicable to, where you might be, questions that you have toward the end of it. Or I think if you have questions as I'm talking, please save those toward the end. And me and Sarah and Neil as well can answer those for you. So next slide. So first of all, what is story of self? Some of you probably have heard this phrase before, may even be familiar with it. But it's really, who are you? What have you been called to do, and why have you been called to do it? Specifically in this case, running for office. You hear it sometimes often in like a Marshall Gantz, who's a political organizer, who's well known as also a theorist in campaign spaces, worked with Obama's campaign in 2008. The story of self was very much about connecting with why the voter, the volunteer was there for a campaign. But this is also just very critical for a candidate's perspective. So thinking of this, when I ran for public office, right, I usually, and I talk about this also in just my general narrative, whether it's in work or running for public office or, just in talking with other people, very much of a foundation of my life story is that both my parents are immigrants. I grew up immigrant family, Black immigrant family, with all of those added dynamics to it, and how that shaped my approach and my interest in politics and policy, and how I show up in the world as a result of that, and the things that I care about as an extension of that. Reproductive rights and justice was one of them, as was disability rights and justice. Reproductive rights and justice coming from a family that did not have access to reproductive health care, really shaped the stories of both of my parents, and by extension, how they sort of taught me about autonomy, right? And also thinking about disability rights and justice, how I got involved in that was having close family members who had a lot of disabilities and really struggle with the system. And I really saw firsthand, through helping and working with them, the situations that gutted a lot of our social safety net, and how we can make better policies. So thinking about those things for you, what's your story? Is it growing up with a disability? Is it like being from an immigrant or immigrant family? Is it experiencing racism and sexism? Is it the ableism, homophobia, transphobia? Is it economic struggles, right? Or it could be all of these, right? But what is sort of for you a foundation of your story, right? I'll also say, like, I know I worked with a candidate back in, where did she work? Well, yeah, West Virginia. And she grew up in her district. Her parents were laborers, union organizers, activists. They were people who worked in their workplace and then became, union members and then became organizers in their union. And, the district over time became economically depressed, and that affected their ability to retire, that affected their wages. And that was the story of a lot of people in her district. So for her, fighting for a livable wage, fighting for, her parents' right to retire with, dignity, was a very personal story for her. It was like anchored her in why she was running for public office. So for you, whatever that story is, think of that, because that's going to be important in the building block of this campaign. Next slide. So once you have a sense of what your story of self is, you can answer the questions. Why run for office? Which district, right? So as a result of your story, do you realize you really care about education policy? Do you care about the quality of education in your district? The funding priorities, are the schools in your area crumbling? Could they be, better infrastructure, better resourced? Maybe you're already active on some school committees because of those things that you care about. Then probably running for school board or a state board of education, position makes more sense. Do you really care about real estate development in your neighborhood and how that's going? Neighborhood safety, housing, having enough for multifamily units. That's a big issue right now, given we have a little bit of a housing crisis with the rent costs going up, mortgage rates being inflated. And so is that something that really is of concern in your community? Maybe you care a lot about the community programs that are being offered for young people and folks who are unhoused. Transportation, you want that transit to be better. A lot of those issues are very local. You might want to run for city and county office. Like I like to say with like local office, like, does arguing about bike lanes kind of excite you a little bit? Maybe it's not the most favorite part of your job, but if you actually care about that, you actually care about the sidewalks of your street, that's like a lot of that local stuff, right? And are you somebody who's worried about climate change, Medicaid, Medicare, healthcare generally, voting rights, immigration reform? Those are issues that you're more likely to see in state legislature or Congress. So the idea of this is to really think about the issues you care about. Why, once you know your story of self, what are those key issues that you cared about because of your story? And then think about how though that translates to the type of office that would be right for you. And it's important to know that, because I've worked with candidates who definitely have this sense of, well, I want to run for office, they'll run for state senate. And then I talk to them and I'm like, your platform is perfect for like running for local office. Like I worked with a candidate. I was that situation. And, when she lost her state senate race, I said, you should really consider running for county stuff. All of the advocacy work, all of the information understanding, about tenant worker rights, definite like small business development, all of this stuff, it's like on the local level, right? On the flip side, I knew elected official who had planned to run for county board because he was super active in his county, had been on commissions, volunteered, a bunch of different things. And he realized that, he really wanted to focus on a lot of the disability services, Medicaid, Medicare, expand disability, education funding in general. And he realized that the local area did a very good job of bridging that gap. And so the next level for him was that he had to be running at the state legislature level because the state legislature level was where the funding gap was falling short, which was leaving this local area that as a community had come together and said, we're going to try and fill the funding gap. But if the state was doing their job, it would even be better. So that's why he decided, instead of running for county, that he would run for state legislature. So saying those are things that you should really think of when you're making your decisions. Next slide. All right, so when you have an idea of what office, which district, it could be ideally the one you live in, but there's been a lot of redrawing of districts. Some are still getting, fought over in courts, as we well know in some states. And so that can change where you live, right? So, and where you want to run. So does your story resonate with the district in which you live? Does the priorities you have resonate in the district in which you live? And what I mean by that is, you could be, I'm not saying you can't run in a very red district. I think actually it's important to have Democratic and progressive candidates running in those areas, because we need to build infrastructure and community and stuff there. And eventually a lot of those districts will change from that work. But does the things you care about resonate with the people who will vote for you, who you want to vote for you? If not, maybe you want to think like, all right, where does an issue that I care about sort of land? There have been people who have, in thinking about they're going to run for office down the road, who have moved to districts where their profile, their background, their story, makes sense. And what I definitely don't recommend is like moving to a district and then falling to run the next year, unless it's like in a situation where literally it's a dividing line between your neighborhood and like your house is on one side of the line and the other side of the line. That's like, at that point, you're in the same community. But I mean, like if you move completely to the other side, like a different county where you just haven't been engaged, if you're going to do that, make sure that's like a few years investment so you can get involved there and do, a lot of the stuff and find the right place to live and not do this, last minute scramble on where I'm going to live. But at answering questions on your story, the office while you were running, will help define the candidate you will be, and knowing which district that you're going to be in. Again, I mentioned the West Virginia candidate because she was from that area. She knew that area very well. And her family story was the story of the district. So just thinking about that when you think about running for office in a place that your story, your experience absolutely resonates.
Fatima, can we pause real quick? For some reason, I just noticed that the captions are not showing up on the Zoom platform.
Okay.
But they are showing up on stream text. So I'm not sure what's going on there.
Okay.
Apologies. Hmm. Let me see. Oh, can anyone let me know there is a hide and show toggle. It looks like there might be an issue from our captioner's end. I apologize. They can try to sign out and sign back in. Or does anyone need the captions on screen, or can you use the stream text link? I think we will just move forward with the stream text at the moment, if that's okay. Apologies for that.
So I can start again.
Yeah, you can keep going.
Okay, awesome. Yes, so knowing your story of self, what your causes are, what you care about, and how it sort of fits into the larger story of the district, the story of we, right? Definitely will help you be the best candidate, right? So it will also be the foundation for your stump speech, so that 90-second to 3-minute introduction to voters. It'll help you with your platform, the top 3, maybe 5, but usually good, top 3 issues that are important to you and why you're running and what you aim to do. Press releases and campaign messaging. It's not on here, but donor appeal, so appeals to fund, donors, and then also your social media and your website. Next slide. So we'll talk a little bit about good examples of that narrative. So Rebecca Lamort, who is also a board member of Disability Victory Fund, throughout her career, she's been a political organizer with labor and political strategist with candidates in New York City. So she got to know quite a bit about the area in which she was living and working. And she's also somebody who became disabled at 22. And that helped that was a big part of her story, and running on a platform of disability justice, which intersects with a lot of different issues, race, gender, economic justice, and stuff. So I want you to think about how her story is a good example of essentially just sort of anchoring her story of self into the platform that she eventually developed. And she says, the way we'll see change and guarantee accessibility, address comprehensively, is to be in the rooms where decisions are made. We don't want to just be a topic of conversation or an agenda item. So hers was very much centered around having more people who look like her, who have her experiences in the room. Next slide. Everybody recognizes Ayanna Pressley, all-star member of Congress, first woman of color from the Massachusetts congressional delegation. One of her more famous quotes is, "The people closest to the pain should be closest to the power." She ran in a competitive primary against another Democrat. He was very good on most of the issues. He voted the right way. And so the case that she had to make, because she was running against someone who had a similar politics to her, was that in the time that he'd served, the district had changed a lot. The needs had changed a lot. The makeup of the district had changed a lot. And that, time for a new generation of leadership that was more reflective of those experiences and those needs. And for her, that story was very much growing up in a working class family, single mom, worked multiple jobs. A lot of the story of a lot of folks in her congressional district. Father was incarcerated, had drug addiction, and being a survivor of sexual violence, and talking very openly about that. And also she's, now more well known as a member of the disabled community. She has a diagnosis of alopecia and autoimmune disorders. So she also centers that now in her story. But she definitely uses all of these pieces as to what informs her about her policy, and saying folks like me, folks from my background, should be at the table, much like Rebecca was saying in the previous slide. All right, now we're going to have a couple of video examples of how if you have a good message, you thought of your story of self, you thought of your story of self, you weaved that into your message, and you weaved that into everything else to create a good video. And we just logged out, so I was gonna.
Yeah, I have to change the settings for the video so we can share the sound. So just give me a second and I will do that. Okay. Everyone see that? Good to go?
I can.
You are seeing exactly what I see every day of my life. At the age of 8, I lost my vision, first in my left eye and then in my right. I've never let my blindness define me, but it has shaped who I am as a person. My name is Alex Gray, and I'm running for one of your 4 at-large city council seats in Boston. I've lived and worked in Boston for 20 years. Boston College grad, Suffolk Law grad. I've worked in state and city government. I ride the T, complain about the weather. I love these teams, met these guys, even got to do this in front of 37,000 people. And I recently became a dad. Meet Emerson. I made it through this world not on my own, but by trusting others, and not by hearing, but by listening. Among my proudest accomplishments, I helped launch the Fairmount commuter rail line working under Governor Deval Patrick. And as a policy advisor for Mayor Walsh, I helped create Boston's first ever tuition-free community college program. My experience has brought me into every neighborhood in this city and allowed me to work on a variety of issues. After 4 years of divisive words on TV and social media, I think it's time that we turn away from our screens, turn to each other, and truly listen. I listened to the teachers, who were some of the frontline heroes during the pandemic. I listened to the nurses, who fight every day for fair wages. I've listened to the young people, who can't afford to live and work in
Sorry about that.
Boston. I listened to the parents who had to keep their families fed, healthy, and educated over the past year. I listened to individuals with disabilities who, like so many groups, were hit hard by the pandemic. And now I'm ready to listen to you. My name is Alex Gray. I'd be honored to earn one of your 4 votes on Tuesday, September 14th.
Great.
All right. Thanks, Sarah. I really love that video because oftentimes candidates, when they run for office, you see, you know, maybe the disabilities like briefly mentioned, and then they kind of move on. But he very much integrated it into who he was as a candidate, you know, talking about, I mean, I've heard this from, you know, my friends who are blind, but, you know, your other senses are heightened. And so his hearing sense is particularly heightened, and he used it as a benefit. He's like, listen, like being a public official is about listening to what your voters need at the end of the day. And that's what I do on a regular basis because I don't have the sense of sight, right? So I thought he just did a beautiful job of that. And that's a way you can really actually center your disability as opposed to make it an aside or I'm hiding from it or whatever, like we have seen some elected officials do in the past or currently. So that's what I love about him. But like, anybody else have any other thoughts on it before we move on to the next slide?
I think we can go on.
Okay, cool. And then we have another one. Sarah, if you want to load that one up as well.
Growing up, we heard a lot about the glory days of Braddock. From the theaters to the shops to the crowded Main Street, Braddock was supposed to be the American dream, but I never knew that town. Our labor made the steel that built America, but when the mills left, our communities paid the price. We watched the people with money and power make our kids sick with asthma, break our unions, and then blame us for the blight and crime. Braddock's story is America's story. One America for the folks who benefit from division and exploitation. Another America for those of us who've been doing the heavy lifting all along. I'm ready to bring the fight I've been in my whole life to Washington. From organizing for environmental justice to becoming the first Black woman elected from the state house from Western Pennsylvania, I've learned a valuable lesson. The rich get richer and we get sicker until the day we realize we outnumber them. The day we stand up and say, this is not a sacrifice zone. This is our home. Right here in Western Pennsylvania, we've been building a movement for Green New Deal, Medicare for all, racial and economic justice, and strong public schools. I'm Summer Lee. I'm running for Congress, and we're not taking any of their corporate PAC money. If poor and working people come together, we can fix our country.
All right. This one I love because Summer Lee, she's a great example of somebody who grew up in an area, was very, very motivated by the fact that the district that she grew up in was not the district that kind of was legendary, quite frankly, for some of, well, she said, providing the steel that built America, and working a lot on those issues that ailed her community. She was an environmental justice organizer. She worked as a labor organizer on the Fight for 15 for better wages. She also worked with her community of like especially students and parents who their children were getting harassed by school resource officers or the local police. And so the school board was doing nothing about it. So she ran a write-in campaign to actually have the school board members replaced. So she's a good example of somebody who had, a story that translated into the issues that she really kind of cared about and centered. And when she was running for Congress, she was already a state house representative. So she'd already had sort of like, a viable reason as to why she was taking this fight to the next level. So I love this as another good example of how you can really tell a compelling story, and that's be the anchor of your campaign and what you care about. And that's important and relative to the district. All right, let's show you a bad example. So as many of you know, Edward M.
Let me
Kennedy.
get this up. Hold on. I have to optimize for video clip again. I forgot about this.
Oh.
Nope, it's fine. Let me just change the sharing again. There we go.
Awesome. So Edward M. Kennedy.
Kennedy can be dominating, imposing, and masterful. But off the stone, in personal interviews, he can become stilted, elliptical, and at times appear as if he really doesn't want America to get to know him. Why do you want to be president?
Well, were I to make the announcement and to run, the reasons that I would run is because I have a great belief in this country that there's more natural resources than any nation of the world. There's the greatest educated population in the world, the greatest technology of any country in the world, the greatest capacity for innovation in the world, and the greatest political system in the world. And yet I see at the current time that most of the industrial nations of the world are exceeding us in terms of productivity, are doing better than us in terms of meeting the problems of inflation, that they're dealing with their problems of energy and their problems of unemployment. And it just seems to me that this nation can cope and deal with its problems in a way that it has in the past. We're facing complex issues and problems in this nation at this time, but we have faced similar challenges at other times. And the energies and the resourcefulness of this nation, I think, should be focused on these problems in a way that brings a sense of restoration in this country by its people in dealing with the problems that we face, primarily the issues on the economy, the problems of inflation, and the problems of energy. And I would basically feel that that it's imperative for this country to either move forward, that it can't stand still, or otherwise it moves backward.
So, yeah. Um, Now, I think all of us know Ted Kennedy, as somebody who is well known in Democratic politics from a very famous political family. And he in his own right, certainly by 1980, and certainly as we, I think, of our generation and younger got to know him, has done a lot. People called him the Lion of the Senate. He's given better speeches and better interviews than the one there. But a couple of highlights, he gets asked the why, and there's this audible pause, not even just a pause, but it was like audible. It was like long enough to be distinctly uncomfortable. And his answer was like elliptical. I guess it's like the reporter said, he really had no answers to why he was running. Here he is from, known for his work on, disability rights, for any of the legacies and working with his brothers on, different policies and Democratic administrations. And he just dropped the ball essentially on highlighting any of it. It's surprising because I always love this because it's just not a representative of how he's been in politics traditionally. And it's also worse because he'd been a public servant. I think he'd been in the US Senate at this point for over a decade, and he didn't have an answer. So you don't ever want to be caught in this moment. That's why it's very important from the start, your why, your story of self, why you're running for this particular office. And why, in his case, he was running for president of the United States, but why this district? Why now? All of that should be able to be answered. He didn't even give the answer of, I'm running to finish the work of my brothers. That would have been a perfectly fine answer for, all things considered, and what he gave, which was just very not even clear. So definitely that's why you need to have your answers so you don't end up like this. Next slide. All right. So in planning to run for office, you want to be able to build your brand, right? A lot of times people talk about this in sort of the professional sense or the media sense, or you're an influencer or whatever. But, running for public office is very much also about building a brand. And for me, brand means what you're known for, right? People knew me as, the person who cared about reproductive rights because I'd written op-eds on it. I've in national outlets and in my community, I raised money. I've hosted fundraisers. I've volunteered on, canvases with Planned Parenthood. People knew I was focused on disability rights because I was involved in a couple of local commissions in the area, and I served on a state board, and I talked about those things, right? So in the ways that when you think about when you're running for office, you start, if you're not already doing this, start thinking about this for yourself. Letters to the editor that you can write, right? Opinion editorials, op-eds, blog posts specifically, on local community or state or political blogs that are popular in your area, radio, podcast, TV, website, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And this is stuff you can start doing before you run and continue and ramp it up with the help of staff after you run. But it's making you sort of an authority who's known on specific issues, right? AOC is kind of branded with Green New Deal and the environment, because that was sort of a big focus of her campaign, as well as economic justice. Sherrod Brown, very much with workers' rights, economic justice, if you think of candidates. Cori Bush, There was, she first kind of became known as a Black Lives Matter activist in the wake of Ferguson and criminal justice reform. But now people would also probably say that, they know her as an advocate for the unhoused, especially after she slept on the Capitol steps. And she was like writing and talking about these issues as an activist and organizer before she was a candidate for Congress. So for you, sort of what's your, after you've identified all of your, your story of self, your why, the office and all of that, and you start thinking about, putting yourself out there if you are already, this is stuff that you should be doing. So people know you and they'll be like, oh, yeah, I know what you stand for because I've seen your commentary, I've heard your interviews, I've seen your posts all the time. So next slide. And just going a little deeper into sort of that building your brand in the traditional media sense, writing letters to the editor in response to articles in local papers on issues relevant to your community. So your local papers are great on what's, popping in the area, what's the top issues. And so, if you see something on an issue that you're an expert on, right, it's establishing your expertise, write a letter to the editor. The op-eds are definitely great for positioning you on being somebody who's known for work that you do. So pitching an op-ed or two to your local paper or your local blog. And then writing a blog post on issues you care about for blogs frequented in your community. Be that progressive political blog, be that like a local, like, I want to say a restaurant blog, but a blog that's kind of like local to your area that talks about all the things that are happening in your area. And then people always go to, that sort of thing. So yeah, next slide. And then digital media is still rather important in branding somebody. Facebook, still close to over 70% of Americans still use it. So some folks have stopped using it. I don't use it as much as I used to, but it's still relevant in public life. So it's a great to post long form post on issues. If you're a candidate for public office, live stream hosting Q&As. One person I knew before she ran for office, I used to joke, oh, I know she's planning to run for office because she, posted when she was attending key community events, right? It's just like more of that repetition kind of was there and you were seeing her out and about. So even if you didn't see her at the event, she made sure everybody knew she was at her event by just saying, hey, I was at this recent fundraiser for this candidate or for this cause, or I was door knocking or whatever, like really just sort of built her profile in that way. Recognizing important holidays, giving shout outs, especially to constituencies that are key in your community. Twitter, or now known as X, but I will always call it Twitter. Still, until there's a really reasonable like replacement, and there's a bunch, but aren't fully fleshed out or still in beta mode, it's still a place to go for posting about thoughts, ideas, news articles. It is definitely, we'll see if I think the recent threat was that he might introduce a monthly charge and that might finally just kill the platform. But until that happens, the media aren't really leaving that platform. And that's still a good place to put your campaign press releases, build a little following, highlight endorsements, your blog posts, any event alerts. Some people are using it for fundraising and I think it's going well. So yeah, and then definite must have. So if you're a candidate running for public office, you should always have a Facebook public profile page. Definitely want to highlight that. If you're a private citizen, you can still use your own personal page, but just start building up your friend follower. It's also fine if you know you're planning to run for office and you create a public page and start guiding people over there. Especially if people know that you're potentially somebody who's thinking of running for office. So if you even want to start that before you run for office and it's just like activist or some speaker, something like that, in that public profile, then you can do that. But definitely when you run for office, create a candidate page that's separate. Campaign website is a definite must-have. I was amazed even in the last few years, the number of candidates I know who like just had a Facebook page, which is better than nothing, but a campaign website is just sort of like a must-have. It can be a very simple thing made off of Squarespace, but it should be a collection of everything that your campaign represents, like a one-stop shop. Your policies are there, how to volunteer, event calendar, where to donate, press statements, all there, right? Next slide. And then other digital media that's key. YouTube, campaign ads, whether you do them for TV or Facebook or IG, can be shared here, such as educational videos, your direct to cameras, media interviews, recorded debates, and forums, all go there. Elizabeth Warren is a good example of somebody who really had a good YouTube community. She put a lot of her educational videos that she would do on, like, this is how the Senate rules work, or this is how bankruptcy, like just that sort of stuff there. And especially when she was like planning to run for president. So YouTube is like the only platform that has a higher participation, like I think like 80% of the US population actually gets on YouTube. So it's a great place to have a presence. And the nice thing about it is, like I said, if you have Facebook or Instagram or even TikTok, you can share those videos over to YouTube for people to view. So you can like repurpose content, and you can put your campaign ads or TV there or anything else. IG also just because it's part of Facebook, it's part of the Meta family, as it were. So it's great to cross post a lot of things there. You'll see some elected officials or candidates will cross post screenshots of tweets, especially if it's just key to something they want to highlight, or Facebook posts. It's great to repurpose videos from YouTube into IG Reels, any campaign images, stuff from you on the trail really goes great here. And hosting live stream conversations. I remember kind of at the beginning of the pandemic, there was a lot of those IG live conversations of, celebrities talking to other celebrities or politicians talking to other folks. And it gets a lot of engagement in the reels. Not the reels, I guess it's like the stories section of Instagram. And you can do polls, you can do questions, Q&A. It's a really great way to just build engagement with an audience that may not be on Facebook or Twitter as well. And then TikTok, they are owned by a company in China that's owned by the Chinese. So there's all of those sort of like issues there, but it ain't going anywhere. It's definitely growing. Unlike Snapchat, it doesn't have like a political department. And so, in talking to folks who really built followings on TikTok, it is really great for educational content, to fun content, right? But it's, candidates are finding ways to use it. It's great to share your direct to cameras, maybe even like, interaction with the audience. Content for TikTok must be made native to the app to be most successful. So if you're creating a video, create it in TikTok and then you can share it elsewhere, because they have their own unique community there. There may be people on TikTok who are on other places, but they have a lot of people who are just exclusively on TikTok. Also, it's a great place if you have some influencers who have some decent followings, 5,000, 10,000, or higher. It's a great way to get people engaged, with your influencers to engage with your content and share it and let people know about you and your election. TikTok is great, even though there are older folks on there. It is a really great with the Gen Z group. If you have a district where you're trying to reach out to young people, you want to get young people engaged in your campaign, as is IG. Facebook and YouTube are more age agnostic. It kind of cuts well across all demographics, except Facebook, I would say definitely not for Gen Zers. Consider it their grandparents' social media now. So I think that's it on this slide. All right. And so just to give you a bit of a highlight on the campaign website example, this is like Cori Bush's campaign website. I think from a few years back, I think she's updated more since then. This was simple. She ran like campaign on a shoestring budget, like small. So, you know, to the left here at the top, next to her name, you know, you got the about, you got her endorsements, how to volunteer, her issue. She had a campaign store, and then who to contact, and then how to donate in red on the right. Right. So it's very simple, like what's on our site. You don't have to do a lot of bells and whistles if you don't have a whole lot of money. You just have to have that. You don't even have to have the store. The store is nice to have. Although I will say, having just worked with the campaign that did not have any campaign merch, it's always nice to have like some t-shirts, some stickers, like things for folks to, you know, get excited about. So yeah, next example. All right. Everybody's like latest favorite disabled elected official, Sean Fetterman. Now his campaign had tons of money, so he could do a lot more bells and whistles with his campaign as a US Senate candidate. But his is also pretty simple, honestly. I mean, he's got the campaign video on the front. It's got the you go onto his website right away. He has email address, zip code, phone number. You know, meet the Fettermans, about him, his family, issues, voting, volunteer, store again, events, donate, yellow button, since this like color theme is like black and yellow and white. So yeah, that's a good example of a website. And this is one that he has like lots of money. And these were the key things he made sure, you know, he had on his website for somebody who was coming to engage with it. So final tips, know your why in running for office. Your story and what you care about should direct your choice for what office you're running for. Your story and eventual campaign message should resonate with a part of your community, especially the base of voters that you know you need to turn out. Running for office in the next year and 2 years, especially next year, start building your online brand now if you haven't. In the next 2 years, you got a little bit more time. And the digital must-haves, having a website, Facebook, and for now, definitely a Twitter account. And I think at this point, you should just definitely add a YouTube into that, just for a place to archive your videos and tapping into that community. And that's it on my end.
And we do have some questions. We did receive one in the chat a little while ago. And then Andrew, I will get to you. What if you have a criminal background that gets in the way of your candidacy? Is there any hope for such a candidate?
Criminal background. Actually, yeah. I mean, I would say so. Especially if you're honest about it. You know, the one thing that was really great about, I think, this last 7 years in politics, has been a lot of candidates who would have otherwise counted themselves out seeing Donald Trump elected. But definitely changed their minds about, you know, they're running for office. And there are folks who've had, you know, I remember working for one organization and being a candidate. I don't know if I can't remember if it was a local or state led, but the person had been convicted either misdemeanor or felony on drug possession, and had been an addict. And so I had a story about that. It was very much tied to getting attached to drugs because of, I think, an old injury from work, being a laborer in the area. And you know, how that had, you know, changed, made it part of her story of self, right? I think as long as you, you know, show that, I guess as they call it, like the rehabilitation, you know, what you've learned from it, you know, and it's not, I mean, it's not like first degree murder. I think, you know, you could still have an opportunity to run. I don't know, Neil or Sarah, if you wanted to add anything to that, or Neil specifically, because I know you work with candidates a lot.
Yeah, I will just add that I think, yeah, keeping in mind that opposition research is something that you're going to need to prepare for, which opposition research is when you figure out everything that your those who are campaigning against you could try to say about you. So just being honest about it, being upfront about it, not trying to hide anything, and contextualizing it, I think is really helpful. Neil?
I'll just add that, yes, opposition research is key on both sides, not just for you as the candidate, but also for your opponents or opponents, depending on how large your primary or general election is going to be. But also in relation to being a felon or specifically a returning citizen, as I like to phrase it, you have the opportunity to frame your story as you knew what you did, there's a cause and effect, and you are a returning citizen now, so you aren't in the position that you were in previously. There are numerous stories of formerly incarcerated folks who have successfully gone on to win elected office. So you can be certainly added to that number.
Mm-hmm. Awesome, Sarah. Any other questions or?
Sarah, it looks like you're on mute.
I am trying to unmute Andrew, so. Is it allowing you? There you go.
It's not a lot. For some reason, the host is not allowing.
There, we can hear you now.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, first thing to piggyback off the last thing with in New York City, we just had a former incarcerated person get elected to the assembly. But I'm joking around saying basically he actually did it backwards. He went to jail, then went to the assembly, versus what we've been having him go to office and then get arrested. But my main question was, as we were talking about things with the websites and stuff like that, and something I've been noticing lacking in a lot of campaigns has been accessible websites.
Mm-hmm.
This is, I think, the perfect place to be talking about this and making sure that, because this is a campaign's 24/7 advertisement, and it should be reaching out. It's always there, always working, and trying to find, quote unquote, a cheat sheet, if you want to call it that way, a simple thing for basically all candidates to be using in that regard. Because I'm also a life member of 504 Democratic Club here in New York City, which is disability rights. Our main focus is disability rights. And our thing is to try to get this going. Okay, so that's the whole issue. Okay, I'll leave it at that for the moment.
Yeah. So definitely website accessibility is something that is important to take into consideration. That's something where our website is created on Squarespace. And so there are tools that are out there like the WebAIM, WEBAIM Wave tool, which helps with accessibility evaluations, working with people with disabilities in your campaigns and communities. It's a good place where you can, hire disabled people to help with your campaigns, especially folks who have experience with experience with web accessibility. So definitely something to keep in consideration. Okay, we've unfortunately are over time. So I want to see, Kieran, we'll just give you a second, if you maybe have like 30 seconds here. Ask your question, we'll see if we can address it real quick.
All right, I'll try to be quick. Hi, my name is Kiran, and I am a polio survivor. I had polio when I was, a little kid. Anyhow, right now I'm running for commissioner. And interestingly, I am running for Democrats, but there is a party favorite. I mean, it's established, nobody says, but it's very clear, it is a party favorite. And I want some tips as to how I can make inroads. I'm trying to reach out to people and say, hey, just hear me out, but I've been facing challenges. My campaign manager, Chris, is here too. And this is what we wanted to know.
And is it specifically, how to navigate that challenge is really?
Yes, how to know. So we both are Democrats, right? But
Yeah,
there
yeah,
is a clear party favorite, and the precinct chairs I'm trying to reach out, and the people, we've met him, and he's whom we are working with, which is fine by me. What I am wanting to know is, how do I now, establish myself or tell them my story? Like I have a video and all that, but just trying to get access is a challenge.
Yeah, I think for you, definitely you want to really focus on, figuring out who your base of voters are going to be and focusing on turning those people out. You definitely are going to want to use your social media to advantage, to really get your video message out there. There are plenty of candidates now, elected in Congress and state Senate and local, who were not the favored candidate by the party establishment, and such, and who were successful because they had a really aggressive grassroots game. A member of Congress, Jahana Hayes, ran for Congress. She was not the favored candidate in that primary. She was underfunded. I think she was running against a candidate who'd worked for like private equity or the banks or something. And, she had been a teacher in her district. And so she used a lot of people who are her best volunteers are the people who were her former students, parents, other teachers who spoke on her behalf and donated small grassroots donations. So really tapping into that base and that grassroots will be the key, I think, for you and being successful and getting your name out there. Neil or Sarah, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add, especially Neil.
Just, bouncing off of your point, I know we're short on time, so I want to be cognizant of that, or over time rather, but just build off of your existing platform. If you aren't consistently sharing your platform on a regular basis, then you need to start. If you aren't, particularly at a hyper local level, like a county commissioner's race, you want to make sure that all of your social media channels are aware of your candidacy. So like Facebook, like Twitter, and also LinkedIn as well. Make sure all of your channels are tapped in.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for showing up today. Apologies for going just a couple minutes over time here. Just a real quick note that our next webinar will be happening on October 16th. We will be sending a follow-up email with that information and also with a link to the recording from today. But that is going to be about how to use advocacy in your campaign, or if you are working on a campaign, just setting advocacy goals. And that will be with our board member, Dom Kelly, who is the founder and CEO of New Disabled South. So we hope to see you at 1 o'clock Eastern on October 16th. Thank you, everyone.